So I think it's a great opportunity as an AFMT member to many such international expos for last 1 year, I think, and a lot of benefits people get during these visits also, I think. So with that, I would like Mr. Rajesh Shabaria to give a brief introduction of our speaker today, and then you can start the session.
Sure, I'll take over. Thank you, Josefa ji. Anupam ji, welcome.
Thank you, Rajesh ji. Thank you very much.
I would like to just introduce Mr. Anupam Kaul. He is a veteran on quality and standards with more than 4 decades of hands-on experience across diverse pillars of the quality ecosystem in India and overseas. It includes industrial quality assurance, third-party confirmation assessment, metrology, standards developments, accreditation, business excellence, and policy advocacy on technical regulations. He delivered these services through various roles as auditor, assessor, trainer, consultant, subject matter experts, advisor, policy developer in senior leadership positions at Bureau of Indian Standards and Confederation of Indian Industry. Mr. Anupam now advises business industry and government as strategic advisor, quality and standards, chairs several national standard committees, and is a senior expert with clean development mechanism of the United Nations. So welcome Anupam ji once more, and I would like all to welcome Mr. Anupam ji.
Thank you, Rajesh ji. So should I begin then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you, Josefa ji. Thank you, Rajesh ji. Thank you, Sheetal ji, for inviting me today for doing this webinar. So I can see many familiar faces here. People we have interacted with over the course of last 1 year. I think when all this business began, with the standards getting mandated by the government. So I think it was last almost 1 year exactly. I think March that we started discussion on this, and a lot of developments have taken place. Of course, in the last course of 1 year, we have been quite successful in getting the government and the BIS to sit down back on the table to discuss our issues. And that progress is fairly heartening at the moment. But then a lot of work still to be done. So I think today's webinar, as I think I've discussed with Mr. Sampalwala, is going to be a general awareness session on the ecosystem of the BIS, how they operate, how they develop standards, how the standards get converted into technical regulations, they get mandated, and then what happens, in terms of implementation. Also, where we are today in terms of the QCO that have been issued by the government. Good news is, of course, as we have heard only 2 days back, that the QCOs for boards, all the boards, so they have been deferred till next year. So different dates, January, February, and March. So we have a lot of breathing time now to get ourselves, put things together, organize ourselves as an industry. So that is good. Also, incidentally, for a very limited purpose and on a very strategic note. So I have actually joined AFMT as an advisor to be able to represent AFMT on the standards committee at the BIS. I did attend at least one committee meeting, an important one that happened in November. And we have been able to inject some ideas there, and that I'm going to also discuss with you when I finish my presentation today. So bear with me. The first part of the presentation is on awareness for those who are not exposed to how BIS functions and how what we are going to face as time will come as we implement the standards. So I'm going to share my screen. It's a presentation, and I'll try and finish it early so that we'll have time for discussion. So yeah. So just let me see. Share. Let me know when it comes on your screen.
Yes, it's visible.
Good. Okay. Okay. Only one problem happens when you get sharing rights. So as people keep joining the webinar, we see a lot of get flashes on the screen. So it's a bit distracting, but so this is the topic of the discussion as awareness session. So we will go with this one, and then we'll have enough room for and time for discussion later on. Yeah, okay. So to start with, Bureau of Indian Standards, it's a government body. I used to work for them. For about 25 years, I worked with the BIS. When I joined, it was ISI, Indian Standards Institute, then it was a private body, and then it became a government body in 1988, sometime around that time. But the mandate more or less remains the same. And core activity of BIS is to develop standards. And there are NSBs, national standard bodies all over the world. So they formulate standards across multiple disciplines. They have 16 division councils right now. Two new ones have been recently added, one on services, one on Ayush. But all of us are engineering committees and different subject matters. So our subject comes under civil engineering of BIS. And then they also do certification. Actually, the two activities are distinct. And many bodies world over do not do certification, or bodies who do certification do not do standards formulation. But some countries, including India, do both together. So BIS does standards development, and they also do certification, but they do certification only on BIS standards. There are other certification bodies who will certify on any standard by developed by any body. But India, because of the mandate given in the BIS Act, they do only certification as per Indian standards. And that's why government, when they decide to impose technical regulations, they use BIS because they are the custodians of both the intellectual property of the Indian standards, as well as a government-enabled, empowered certification program, which can also then be converted into mandatory certification. And that's why when we do mandatory certification of BIS, necessarily the compliance to Indian standards also comes hand in hand. So they go together. Additionally, BIS also does other types of certification. For example, gold jewelry, you must have all bought and seen jewelry over the last 20 years. They have been able to first develop it as a voluntary program. And now selectively in certain regions like in NCT, Delhi, and some metros, it has been made mandatory. Otherwise, they're still voluntary in certain geographies. And then they also do, these are completely voluntary programs, management systems certification, the ISO 9000 kind of certifications. So they do that. Then they do a lot of testing. Testing primarily is for captive purposes for their own product certification program. They also do some referee testing for courts, for example, for statutory bodies, but primarily for themselves. And then a lot of capacity building training. So I was myself, in fact, my last assignment at BIS I was the head of their training institute in Noida, fairly large, good institute. So they do a lot of training, and hopefully we should all be, I think Mr. Josefa, if you recall, so we have been there. We have attended training programs
Yes,
at the training institute. Yes, exactly. That's right. Yes. Okay. So as I mentioned to you, so these are the 16 divisions that BIS has. We come under CED, which is Civil Engineering Department number 3 on the right-hand side. And this is the structure by which standards get developed. So of course, we have the apex body called the Bureau, headed by the minister. And then there is a Standard Advisory Committee. I've been on this committee before. So it's composed primarily of people from outside, from different stakeholders, including industry. And then the work begins actually at the division council level. So that's where the strategy plans for the standards development happens. So I am a member of 2 division councils. I used to be a member of many others too earlier. So that's where they decide on what committees will be formed and what will be the thrust areas, all of those. And then actual standards formulation takes place at the sectional committee levels. So that's where we are members, AFMT in CED 35. I don't know about CED 20, also probably for boards, whether we are members. But certainly the more important one right now is where we are members. So these committees are also again composed of multi-stakeholder interests, industry bodies, direct industries, as well as government bodies, academics, institutes, research bodies, consumer bodies. So all of them come together for this. So not necessarily everybody is an expert in this committee, and that's why what they do is then they also form subcommittees, working groups where they're only experts. So these smaller groups, they do the standards writing work, or they attend to comments received on existing standards, take up revisions. So nowadays the research is also being conducted by BIS. So these are the lowest level is the actual working level, and their work then goes to the sectional committee, which then adopts the standards. So that's how they function. As you can see the numbers here, there are quite a few bodies which work here. More than 40,000 people work for as committee members for the BIS. So as Mr. Rajesh mentioned, so I am chairing 2 committees. I'm a member of at least about 10 to 12 committees in different divisions. And I also take up work on behalf of industry and associations with the other committees. So that's, of course, how I came into the picture for this one. And this is the process that is followed for any standard. And very recently, we've had a series of standards being published on furniture. So in 2022, the work began somewhere in early 21. And this is how it went through. So there was a new work item proposal. And this can be given by anybody. We can propose. I have been proposing many new work items on behalf of industry in the recent times. All of us can do that. Or we can even propose a revision. So that's how it happens. We have to first say that this is the standard that we want. And these are the objectives, this is the purpose, this will be the benefits, how industry will benefit, how the country will benefit. So there's a format, there's a proposal form. We fill it up, and then they also expect us, somebody who proposes, to also give them a starting draft, a new work. So that's called a working draft. That's how it begins. And this working draft is then put up before the committee. And once the committee approves the subject, that it can be taken up for standardization. And they also generally okay with the working draft. Then that is converted by the committee into a preliminary draft. That's the official document then by BIS. And this preliminary draft is first discussed within the committee. It may go through multiple iterations. Once the members are satisfied of the main committee, then it is put into something which is called a wide circulation draft. Wide circulation goes to real wide stakeholder consultation beyond membership. All industry bodies, industry themselves, whoever is represented anywhere, it will be sent to, and all of the stakeholders as well. So that is where we get an opportunity to comment on the standards or on amendments. Recently, I'll talk about the amendments to the furniture standards. So that's right now under wide circulation at this moment. And we have an obligation to comment as members, as if AFMT, so we must do that. And I'll discuss with you the strategy that we must adopt for that. So that's what is happening. It'll happen for new standards. It'll happen for major amendments. It will also happen for revision of standards. So that's a very important stage when standards are being discussed across wide stakeholder groups. And the comments are received back by the committee or by the working groups. Then they examine every comment. Every comment has to be attended necessarily. So nothing can be glossed over. But then, of course, in their own wisdom, and because they're experts, they decide what comments are acceptable, what are not acceptable. And that recommendation goes back to the committee from the working group. The sectional committee, again, has an opportunity if we are members there. So we can raise our voice, we can raise our concerns there on what is accepted, what is not accepted, what more is to be done. So it goes through a deliberation process. It can happen over one committee meeting. It can happen over 2 or 3 committee meetings as well. So it depends upon how complex the subject is, how many interest groups are involved, and what are the concerns. So some standards get developed very fast. It can be done in a year's time or even less. Sometimes standards may go through a cycle of 2 to 3 years' time. It depends upon how complex the subject is and how many people are actually interested. For example, when a standard goes under mandatory certification, suddenly everybody is very, very interested. The manufacturer themselves, the importers, the testing laboratories, user groups, obviously. So everybody is, in our case, for example, the architects, the builders, they are the user groups. So they'll also be interested in what goes into the standards. So everybody's got it. So, and if they're in the committee, so they will raise issues based on their own interests. And then eventually it's a very consensus process. We don't do voting in national committees. There is voting happening in the ISO committees, inevitably. But in the national committees, it's a consensus process. So eventually there is a chairman who takes a call on all comments and all opinions that are expressed. Eventually it is he. If there is a dispute, then he will decide on the issue. Otherwise, attempt is made by the BIS Secretariat to evolve consensus. And that's what works most times. And once that is done, then the committee or the chair, he finalizes the standard. And then it is printed, published, and also gazetted. So this is an official document, then it becomes a document of the Government of India. Every single standard is put on the official gazette of India. And that's why, it has a legal status. It can be used by courts, for example, for disputes, and it can be used for certification and for mandating. So that's what actually happens. That's the process. And then comes the next core activity of BIS, which is the certification programs. And in this, the bulk of the certification happens of the product certification. That means we also have, as I mentioned earlier, management system certification, which is a very minuscule activity of BIS. And hallmarking has grown, of course, in numbers in terms of how many jewelers. I think is almost going to touch about 100,000. But that's a very different kind of a certification program. Jewelers are not actually inspected and audited. It's only the assaying centers where the gold is actually tested. So that is what BIS assesses. That's about 1,400, 1,500 numbers at this moment. But the bulk of the certification happens on products, and where two major schemes. One is called Scheme 1, and the other one is called Scheme 2. So I'll talk about Scheme 2 first, which is a simpler scheme. That's called a self-declaration scheme. And primarily, it is applied for only electronic products. The scheme was conceived by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology almost about 10 years back. And they did not want a full-scale certification scheme for electronic products because they are in large numbers and being imported very largely. It's almost impossible to go in for factory-based, surveillance-based certification. So this scheme was launched, and this is basically a prototype testing. Anybody wants to import a model of electronic product will apply to BIS as a legal entity, as an importing entity, or even as a foreign manufacturer entity. And they have to submit a test report of the model and also describe the details of the model in the application, full details. And then they have to submit a test report from an authorized laboratory based on which the certification is granted. It's a type approval certification based on self-declaration only. After that, BIS does not conduct any surveillance inspections of the factories, but they do surveillance inspections of the market. So if somebody has certified this product based on self-declaration, sorry, then it can be tested from the market. And if it fails, then action will be taken. That's a much simpler scheme. The major scheme that we have is the Scheme 1, or there's the BIS mark scheme, under which all of us currently are going to fall, both for wooden boards, wooden products, and also furniture. So this is the one where we had. So I'll describe the scheme. I think next slide will have that information. And these are the different marks that we have for certification. Although ISI became BIS, as I mentioned to you, in 1988, but they continued to have the BIS certification mark, which only because the brand was very well known, and it continued. So that is the major mark that we have. And then this, if you can see, the one below the green one is the registration mark under Scheme 2. Scheme 4, I'm not describing none. It's very specific schemes, only for a few products. Government has decided to certify in a particular way. They are based on essential requirements given in the regulation, and they can be used for lot inspection and lot certification, batch certification. So we don't qualify under that. So at this moment, I skipped that one. And the other mark that you can see are for system certifications. The logo is also used for hallmarking of gold jewelry, and then the octagon is for system certification. And then the gold jewelry, of course, comes with a lot of different inscription that you find in the gold jewelry. Right. Sorry, I think I missed. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry, this one. Okay. So mandatory certification is done by the government on certain principles, and these principles are internationally agreed under the WTO agreements, World Trade Organization. So they have three major trade agreements. And one of them is the TBT, technical barriers to trade, that covers all products other than food and food and plant, those kind of products, which come under another agreement called SPS, Sanitary and Phytosanitary Agreement. But everything else, all engineering products, are coming under the TBT. And under the TBT, the agreement, the Article 6 there, it informs us that governments can raise technical regulations, impose technical regulations on concerns of human health, animal health, safety, human safety, animal safety, environmental concerns, consumer security, or consumer safety, and also prevention of deceptive practices. Now, what happens here is that predominantly, mostly regulations, technical regulations are imposed worldwide based on health and safety concerns. Now, of course, on sustainability also, environments, we are seeing different types of technical regulations coming in. But in India, traditionally, even not now, even now, I was in BIS, even as way back in 1983, when I was there, government imposed suddenly mandatory certification on cement. Cement was a product which is not directly a safety product, safety related product, but there were huge scale substandard production of cement in the country, and there were real concerns everywhere. So it was mandated, and because of the mandating over the course of time, quality of cement has gone up in the country into world class. So all that happened. So that's the other concern that is used by government, prevention of deceptive practices, and you can impose mandatory standards based on this one. Of late, in the last 3, 4, 5 years, there has been kind of a deliberate attempt by government to mandate standards on different products. The issues are not really what you see on the screen here. Issues are also in terms of certain restriction on imports from certain countries. And this becomes a kind of a mechanism, a tool to impose standards. Now, this is what I'm saying right now. Nobody will accept it in writing. But even if you attend government meetings, they're quite open about it. Earlier, it was very hush-hush, very clandestine, that we don't talk. We only talk about these official concerns. But the game actually is that because other nations, other countries, European bloc, they also use TBT and SPS based regulations for curbing imports. You must have heard of carbon tax, for example, a kind of a regulation, very Europe-centric and protecting European interests. So that from that point of view, government has decided that we'll also follow something similar. So not necessarily all our health or safety concerns or deceptive. So they will come under generally prevention of deceptive practices on the ground that imports are substandard and they're impacting consumers and also impacting our industry, because substandard imports also bring down prices and they become uncompetitive. So that's the concern. That's how furniture standards or wooden board standards have been brought under mandatory certification. These are the considerations, right? And as of now, we have so many products which have been brought under till about, let's say 3 years back. The 458 number that we see on the screen right now was just about 220 odd. And that was over how many years? From 1952 onwards. Okay, in so many years, about 60 or 65 years. And in the last 2, 3 years, the number is more than doubled. And there's a whole lot of new products coming in every day. Pipeline is supposed to be a 600 odd more products, right? And in comparison, BIS does voluntary certification also, which is about 950 products. That list may be slightly lesser now, because some of the 950 have gone on to get included in the upper number, 458. But it'll be still about 900 or something like that. Scheme 2 is very specific, as you see over here, for very, very limited number of products. Primarily, it was for electronic products. Now, because of some bargaining by industry, so some 3 chemicals, 1 textile is also found a way in this, but that's very difficult to get actually. So we have to be under Scheme 1 only. This is the process for the certification that BIS follows. This is the Scheme 1. It is considered to be the most comprehensive scheme globally. There is a ISO standard that gives different types of product certification schemes. So there is a type 5 scheme there. And this, our Scheme 1 of BIS under the BIS Act corresponds to type 4 scheme. And this is what it contains. So it's full compliance to Indian standards, including raw materials. That's what we saw in the furniture standards or in the board standards as well, includes raw materials. The BIS will grant the license to use ISM. The licensing is done essentially, it's actually a voluntary certification program, right? Mandating happens only because government does it later. BIS on its own runs a voluntary certification program, voluntary standards, voluntary. But they still use the term license because the license is to allow the use of ISI mark on the products. It's only for that limited purpose. It's not a factory licensing, by the way, not like statutory bodies or regulatory bodies. They issue license to run the factory. It's not that at all. This is only a license to use the ISI mark because the ISI mark is proprietary to BIS, and that's the licensing. But the licensing is done after factory evaluation. Factory evaluation will include looking at the manufacturing facility, also looking at the quality control and testing facility in the company to see that things, the operation, the process, and also the technical competence is good enough to be able to meet the requirements given in the Indian standards on a consistent basis, which is very important because this is a trust-based certification. This is a series-based certification. So the companies are allowed to put the ISO mark on their own. BIS implementation will happen only once a year after that. So therefore, the evaluation is done of the system, entire system, to ensure, get confidence that the factory will be able to produce products according to the Indian standards. Then before granting the first license, samples are tested by BIS, samples of the models which a manufacturer wants to be included in the standard in a voluntary certification program. So that if you make 10, you can offer 2 and say, I want ISM offer 2, that's fine. But that's only in voluntary, right? If when it becomes mandatory, you don't have a choice. Everything that you're going to produce subsequently, you have to ensure that it has ISM mark. And therefore, you have to offer samples beforehand to BIS who will test it. And they will test it in their own laboratories. BIS got its own labs in eight laboratories, but they also have arrangements with more than 100 laboratories all over the country. And they under a franchisee agreement, and they also test products for the BIS. So it depends on which laboratory tests which products. Samples will be drawn and sent to the laboratory for testing. And once they pass, and everything else is also all right in terms of facilities, then the BIS will grant the license to the manufacturer. So this is a description of the process. It becomes complex for certain products, like our product, furniture, which the standard itself is very complex. And therefore, when I describe this arrangements, process of manufacturing, process of testing, offering of samples, all of that, it becomes quite tough. And so therefore, we need to evolve a strategy, how we need to negotiate with BIS on bringing down the obligations. We'll discuss later on. And then the policy is that one license is granted per Indian standard. Now, what it means is an Indian standard will contain, for example, if you have, let's say, plywood or you have wooden boards. So it will contain different grades in that standard. That's all right. As long as the product family is the same, different grades, one license will be granted. But wooden board and pre-laminated boards are 2 different standards. Plywood is another standard. If you make all 3, then you have to get 3 licenses. It's like this. So that decision is taken based on what is the scope of the standard. And government also mandates when they mandate the entire Indian standard. They don't mandate a particular variety within the standard. They say this standard is now mandated. So anything falling under that will get mandated. And that's how the scope gets determined. So that is granted to the manufacturing unit, to the unit for the product like this. So license is granted to the legal entity, but for the product. So more than one license can be granted to a manufacturing unit. After the certification is granted, then the manufacturer is allowed to run the scheme. BIS will give you a scheme of testing and inspection, and you have to keep testing your product yourself in the factory. Not all tests, routine tests. Some are, different frequencies are given. You repeat certain tests, some interval like that. So that is given, and then you can put the mark if you are satisfied that your product is meeting the requirement. But then BIS will conduct its own surveillance program. Normally, they do it once a year. It used to be 4 times a year earlier, but now, of course, the numbers have changed drastically. Shortage of manpower, all of that. So normally, surveillance is 1 year. It can happen more than once, also, depending upon the performance of the unit. Factory evaluation will take place once again. Not as evaluation, a surveillance. To see that things are all right. Samples will be drawn again, tested. And also, BIS draws samples on the market and tests in there. So that is done incognito. You'll not come to know. They'll draw the samples. They would have taken money from you already. Money is taken from you in terms of marking fee, which there's a minimum. I think nowadays it's about 75,000 per annum, per unit, per license. There are discounts and concessions for MSMEs and for subsequent licenses, but that's a rack rate, something like that. And there's also a unit rate, so as many products that you will mark, you also pay some kind of royalty to BIS. So that's how the money gets transferred from you to BIS. And they use it for the surveillance programs and for testing the samples from the market, all of that. And as I mentioned to you, a scheme is given to you to keep, to maintain. It will give you the frequency of testing the product, repeat testing, and to maintain the records. And the record, the statutory record, because if it is a regulated certification, so even the statutory authority or the BIS, anyone can come and check those records. So they become very important. So we also need quality control staff in the factory to be able to conduct the testing, and it should be competent, which is assessed. If things don't go right, if products fail, or when during surveillance inspections, they find that the process is not behaving appropriately, testing is not being done, testing equipment is malfunctioning, persons are not present, technical persons, many reasons, BIS can stop marking or suspend the license. So different reasons, even for non-payment also that can be done. So that's how it is. So the fee, as I mentioned to you, the application fee, the initial inspection fee, that before the grant of license. So that's not very, that's nominal actually. Then testing charges can be quite heavy. So last that we assessed, it was about roughly about 1 lakh per model per sample, which is quite high. Hopefully it'll come down as more laboratories will come start testing. These are third-party laboratories, by the way, for the purpose of licensing. You will have your own laboratory for your own internal testing as per the scheme of testing. And then there is the annual minimum marking fee, which I mentioned to you, and then a unit rate based marking fee. So that's how the whole structure. I wanted to describe the scheme to you because this is what we are all going to face in course of time. So this is the overall scheme, how it operates. As far as the other processes are concerned, how the license is granted. So it's fairly online these days. Process has become very simplified. There are also different mechanisms. You can get the product tested yourself, also in the third-party laboratory. Based on that, also you can get a license, but then they will do a repeat testing. So I'll show you how you can get more information about that process, how the licenses are actually granted, the entire process, how it functions. And then we come to this one, what has happened, to these voluntary standards and the voluntary certification. So how they convert into mandatory. So that's the technical regulation. Is a government document, is a notification, which then lays down product characteristics or processes and production methods, so and so, and they make it compliance becomes mandatory. So as far as the QCOs themselves are concerned, incidentally, it's become, government has simplified it. They say we are not going to put anything in the regulation other than the respective Indian standard, the name of the product, and we will quote the relevant clauses or sections from the BIS Act. That's what appears in the QCO, because everything else is already given in the BIS Act, so they don't repeat anything. So it becomes very simple. But if you look at other regulations, for example, regulation on medical devices, or the regulations for pharma products or food products, for example, the first paragraph that you read here, everything is described in detail in those regulations. So all of those requirements. So food safety regulation, for example, they will describe, the processes, the production methods, the standards, the administrative requirements. Many things are prescribed within the regulation. For our purpose, the QCO, Quality Control Order, is a fairly simple instrument. Just a one-pager, and it gives the references of the standard. So the standard then will provide the specifications, and the BIS Act will then provide the necessary enabling clauses and the penalty clauses and all of that. So that's how it really happens. Okay. The difference between a standard here, when the word standard is used, it means a voluntary standard. A voluntary standard is, of course, voluntary. If you want, you can comply with it. You don't even need to get certified. It can be contractual, two parties. You say that I want to buy a standard product as per an Indian standard or a European standard. It's a voluntary standard. Perfectly all right. It could also be a self-declaration by we say my products all comply to Indian standards or ISO standards or ASME standards. You can do that. But when it becomes a technical regulation, then it's no longer voluntary. Then the same standard becomes a part of a technical regulation. Now you have to compulsorily enforce it and meet it. And that's what really happens. Okay. So for international trade, as I mentioned to you, any technical regulation then becomes a non-tariff barrier. So it was never intended initially that regulation will become a barrier, but by default, de facto, it becomes a technical barrier, non-tariff barrier. And nowadays, government do it deliberately as well. So to create this barrier, just to control the the trade balance, or or to give advantage to domestic manufacturers. So for those means, so many countries do that. Primarily, it is only on those 5 concerns, right? Okay. So as this, I think we already finished this more or less. So these are the considerations. And then one important point here is the last paragraph, if you read over here. So whenever a country intends to regulate a product, whether through a standard, through a QCO, whichever way, or an amendment to an existing regulation also, they must notify on a global website. Why? Because more than 190 countries are members of WTO, including India. So we have an obligation under the WTO agreement that whenever we want to mandate or specify any technical regulation, we will inform other member bodies that this is what we need to do. So for that, a 60-day period is allowed to other countries to comment or to raise objections to an intended technical regulation. So, okay. So first there has to be a draft notification, and that draft notification is then made a part of the WTO notification. It then goes for a wide circulation, and we receive, I mean, in many cases, a whole lot of comments are received. Unfortunately for furniture, as I understand, we didn't really receive too many comments. But fortunately for us, it is still under negotiation. So for the furniture and for the block boards and other boards as well, this process was followed by the Government of India. And so there is a website, a WTO TBT website, you can access it. And you can see what are the latest country-wise, it can be filtered country-wise, and you can see what are the latest intended notifications on that website. Okay. So as I mentioned here, Government of India issued technical regulation through different rules and regulations. I gave some examples, and all which are special acts. Food Safety Act, for example. PISO, for example, the Petroleum and Explosives Safety Act is a special act. So like those, the different acts and different regulations. ERDMP regulations, for example, under the PISO, emergency response and disaster management regulations. So all those are regulations under different acts. But for the BIS, it's all under QCOs or under the mighty registration scheme. They are called CRS, compulsory registration scheme orders. So CRS or QCO. For us, it's QCO. That's how it happens. And then these are the acts, sections of BIS Act, Section 16, empowers government to impose mandatory standards on any convert any standard into mandatory. And then Section 17 gives the obligations for manufacturers, retailers, wholesalers, stockists, anybody, so as we see over here, anyone, any economic operator who's dealing with that product afterwards will come under that regime. So there will be obligations of compliance. So primary compliance comes from the manufacturer of ensuring the product meets the requirement of the standard, and he puts the ISI mark. But all others also need to ensure that they buy and sell only certified products and not spurious products, and products that are properly bearing the mark, and they're also properly invoiced. So there is a chain of custody or a chain of traceability chain which is available. So that is Section 17. And 25 also, in addition to any of this, that is superimposing powers given to the government on any essential requirements also, other than the standards. Also, they can impose any technical regulation. Okay, so once, as I mentioned, QCO is issued, its compliance is obligatory on all economic operators, starting from manufacturers to retailers. Now, a very interesting development has taken place recently, which had not appeared earlier. So, in the case of steel utensils, so that order was issued sometime in the last year in August, and on this year, 9th of February, that order became effective. Steel utensils. So IKEA, as one of the international retailers in India, on their own decided to remove all the utensils from their shelves voluntarily, because they said we are not in compliance because we have not been able to procure the products with the ISI mark. These materials were actually supplied to IKEA before the enforcement date, actually. Now, this question arose, therefore, so whether it was right on them to do that, whether it was required, because they had bought the product when it was not obligatory to certify. But the BIS Act and the QCO actually are silent on this. They only specify dates for the manufacturers from so and so date. So apparently, some time back, I had that issue with on some other standard. They were advised to remove. They did that, but nobody else did. I mean, all other major retailers all over the country did not remove those products. So there was a imbalance in the market, and the issue was therefore discussed, deliberated, went up to the government as well. So now this policy matter actually is still under now discussion. What to do about the stocks which are there in the supply chain before a new QCO becomes effective. So of course, although government gives 6 months or 9 months, 12 months time, but that essentially for the manufacturing industry, that time is given to them. The rest of the supply chain doesn't actually have any direct role in that. And they cannot ensure to buy only ISA marked products, because many manufacturers may not have actually got the license. It's like this. So that issue has come up, and hopefully it will be discussed. Will also be applicable to our products, including boards. So hopefully by that time, we will have a policy. And hopefully for non-manufacturers, stockists, for example, and retailers, that margin will be available. Some time will be given to them. So I have also made some proposal. Let's hope that works with the government. Okay, so as we see here, the QCO allows a time of 6 months time for manufacturers to obtain the BIS certification license. Normally start with 6 months. In our cases, both boards and furniture, there was additional time given to MSMEs, another 3 months time, and for micro, another 12 months time. Not another 12 months, another 3 months time. So 6 months, 9 months, and 12 months. That's the time normally which is now being given. Wherever the industry is spread across different segments, and very large, also disorganized, unorganized. So these are the time frame normally being given. But we have also seen almost 90% of the times or cases, these deadlines are deferred, not once, twice, even 3 times. So 6 months becomes 3 months, another 3 months, another 3 months, like that. So even for now, as I mentioned to you in the beginning, for the boards, we have now got almost, I think, another 9-10 months. So starting from January next year, January to March, is when the implementation dates come in. So that's the situation. Furniture, we don't even have the first notification yet. But what has happened, that we will discuss. Okay. But importantly, non-compliance to QCOs are applying ISA mark on non-conforming products, both the situation. Somebody does not take a license, or somebody takes a license and deliberately puts ISA mark on a substandard or a non-compliant, non-conforming product. Both are offenses under the BIS Act, and they attract legal penalties. So again, non-compliance or non-conformance after a license is viewed in 2 ways. One is intentional, one is not intentional. So products will fail, minor failures may happen. So BIS normally takes it in their stride. They will get opportunity for rectification, all of that. But if they come to know that deliberately manufacturers are producing substandard products, then they'll do a search and seizure operation, and there will be prosecution. So all that will happen, and then that entails fines imposed by the court, or compounding by the DGBIS of the penalties, or even in the extreme case, there have been cases of imprisonment also. So normally acts contain these things, but in the case of BIS, all of these have actually got implemented. Even when I was a young officer in BIS, even I conducted many of these raids and search and seizure and prosecutions and things like this. So that's part of the game. That's what happens. Now to come on this one. So these are the QCOs. First, I'm taking up the wood-based products. I'm touching both wood-based and furniture. Is it all right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's important.
Okay, thank you.
I think all members some of them are manufacturers board also. And
yeah, exactly. So I thought I'll do both of them.
Yes.
So this is where we are. As you see on the screen here. So there are 3 QCOs that have been issued. One is called wood-based boards. Second one is plywood and flush door shutters. And the third is resin treated, very special applications, wooden laminates. So the first one has these 5 different standards, 5 families, as I mentioned to you. And you can read them on the screen. The next one has got 10, including prominently different types of plywood, and then also different type of shutters, right? And then the last one, as I mentioned, 3 products, which are compressed wooden laminate for electrical, chemical, and general purposes. On the right-hand side, what you see here, These were the original dates where the notifications were made, 10th August 2023, and the implementation date was 10th February 2024 for the large scale, 3 months additional for small scale, and 3 months additional for micro. Similarly, for the plywood and flush door shutters, it was 29th August, and consequently 29th February, I think 6 months time, and that's what it became. And all of these had this 3-month extension. And I think I haven't put that for the last one. That also has similar arrangements. But as we this month only, the extensions have come because of there were a lot of gaps. Incidentally, for these products, at least for the wooden boards and also for plywood and for wooden flush shutters, BIS has been certifying these products for a very long time. So under the voluntary program, some of the products are the market forces themselves require ISI certification, because that's a minimum qualification to be able to, if you're not having ISI mark, the product is not considered to be a standard grade. So many products under the BIS scheme, voluntary scheme, have taken that kind of status that unless certified, they will not be accepted. So a block board, for example, particle board, for example, and veneered particle board, plywood, wooden flush door shutters, many of them, not all of them, but many of them, by default, they were, you all may already be having licenses, many of you who are manufacturing these under the voluntary program. So why I'm mentioning this is that in these, industry already has experience of certifying these products, number one. BIS has got experience certifying these products. The laboratories are already there who have been testing this. So there is an infrastructure available, and there are subject matter experts available in the standards committee as well. So industry has been taking part in the standards development. All of these standards that you see in the front of you, because they were under certification, so majorly, most of them have been through a consultation, proper consultation process. Industry has participated, given comments. Standards have evolved over a period of time. So many revisions they have gone through. Some of them I was recently saying about 7-8 amendments as well. So it has been a consultative process, very different from furniture. Furniture I'll come to later. So this is the difference here. Despite that, industry had a problem of implementation, and therefore they went to the government and they have now deferred it. So we have a window available now, from now till March, for all of us to get certified. And I don't think after this date, or dates, I should say. So 11th February, 11th May, and then 11th August for wood-based product is a cutoff date. I really don't think there will be any further extension. So if there are issues, let's say with the standards, I did hear certain concerns on the standards, particularly on the use of certain, I think, formaldehyde, certain variety, which is not included in the standard, but there is a demand because it should be environment friendly. So some of the imported I think boards and laminates, they use that formaldehyde. And so we had discussed with BIS and they were quite open to include those grades also in the Indian standards. So that's the time now. If we have any concerns on the standards front, we should go back and see that every grade, every variety is put in the standard, right? I don't really think, as far as testing part is concerned, there will be an issue because we have been testing these products over a long period of time. So that should be okay. So I'll move ahead, and there are questions, of course, we will take them later on, even on this. So now, as far as furniture is concerned, so these are the 6 standards, and there is no official QCO even as of now, which has been notified. A first draft appeared sometime early 23. That was in domestic draft given to industry bodies. I think AFMT also received them. It was a draft just like any other draft, which is notified by the ministry, except that it did not have a date, obviously, to send it to draft. And these 6 standards were mentioned in that one, right? And these have now been, of course, under a lot of discussion. So fortunately for us, because the draft did appear in the market, and then what we observed was, including AFMT, including some of the larger manufacturers in India, including international ones like IKEA, that the standards did not pre-exist. These standards were actually made by BIS in somewhat, a little shortened period, I should say. I wouldn't say hasty, but not in a normal way, because there was a pressure from the government. They had already identified these products. It was already there in their list that they had prepared. So they wanted the standards to be developed. As you see, all of them are 2022 vintage, very recent. They never existed earlier. All these and more. There are more. Sofa beds is coming after this as well. So, and also for some of the accessories. So these standards were developed, and then when these were analyzed by the industry, it was found that they're really very, very complex. We have a few slides to show the breadth of the requirements that these standards contain. So obviously there was a concern, and there was a lot of consultation within industry, and then very quickly it went back to BIS. And initially BIS was very, very reluctant. They said, no, we have developed these standards in consultation with the industry. We went through the process, and then you did not comment anything when the standards were getting developed. Now that you know that they are going to become mandated, you're raising questions. So they were quite reluctant. They said, we have gone through our process, we will not make any changes. Generally that's what they say. We also saw, of course, incidentally, even AFMT was a member of that committee, but we then explained to the BIS, when you make a right of voluntary standard, it's a very different implication about its implementation. So some people will probably use it for setting advantage, or maybe partially use the standard. But when it becomes mandatory, then it becomes obligatory on everybody, and then you have to put everything together. So consultation took place with BIS, with the ministry, with the minister, multiple DPIIT, obviously, because they were the notifiers. So eventually, what happened was that BIS, we had last meeting was in the Secretary Consumer Affairs Office, and that's where it was decided that BIS will take up the amendments. So they said, okay, let us have the proposals for amending the standards. And that's how the process started. So just for your knowledge, before I get back on that subject, so this is the WTO notification. This is, in fact, incidentally, how all TBT notifications look like. Every country will, it's a format given by WTO. So these are the different, it's a structured document, different heads. And so somebody proposes, they give a name to the TBT. They describe why they want to, they want to mandate. They've given the topics here, if you read number 6 over here, like this. So this was the TBT notification issued on the 27th of September 2023 for furniture, right? And obviously it's a 60-day period, a window. Incidentally, in this particular case, a corrigendum was also issued in October, because the date for implementation here in this one was given as 6 months in number 9, whereas the draft said 12 months. So we raised it to the government. We informed them that there's an issue here, and they issued a corrigendum in October. So hopefully, starting from October, 60-day window ended in December, and that's when the window ended. And what we came to know was that although we expected a lot of comments from different countries, they didn't come. And nobody commented on this. That means globally, nobody has an issue if the BIS goes on to implement these standards, right? So that's the situation. But even though this period is over, government could have actually gone on to issue the notification for furniture as well, anytime after December. They haven't done that yet. Why they haven't done it? Because BIS agreed to take up the amendments of the standard on industry's request. Right. Okay. So we became a member. Some more bodies also requested on industries to become a member of the committee, and a committee meeting took. So these were before that, this was the original draft, or let's say this is not actually a draft of the standard. There's only a table culling out the different types of requirements from the standard. It's like this. So I think I've shown this slide in some of my earlier presentations also. This hasn't changed, because as of now, this is the standard and it hasn't changed yet. There are proposed amendments to this one. But if you look at this one, it's fairly intimidating. There are a lot of requirements on the material side, first of all. So depending on what you use, synthetic leather or natural leather or casters, this for work chairs, and also for surface performance. So there's another standard for that now. And then so many tests on the safety side, so stability test. And then we also have there's static load tests and durability tests. So 7 tests on the stability. In different ways they want to test, the chairs with certain loads, which and particular positions. And similarly, static loading, again, different positions. And then more importantly, these are the endurance tests. On the rightmost column, as you see, so at least 5 types of different endurance tests. And if you see the number of cycles, they're fairly high. Now, when we checked with BIS, how did you get these numbers? Where did you get these requirements? So there are certain ISO standards which are already published by ISO. Not all of them are product standards. Many of them were only guidance standards or test method standards. So BIS took some information from there. Then they also took information from some of the industries, large-scale industries who participated actively in the BIS committees. Now, when I say actively, that's a very important term. So whoever participates actively in the BIS committee, whoever gives the most inputs, has a higher chances that his or his industries interests in certain ways would get covered in the standard, because there is no other person to counter or to put any other suggestion. Wide circulation also, people remain silent. So that's what really happens. In this case also, probably certain industries were present in the committee. According to them, they were able to produce products based on these requirements. So that's how all this got injected. Now, I'm not saying this actually happened, but this happens. This actually happens in many, many committees where participation level is not good by the other members. So one interest may predominate, and then this thing really happens. Apparently, things like this also possibly happened here. And therefore, this has now. Then once it was analyzed by the rest of the industry, including yourself, your members, then you found that this was actually very difficult to meet so many requirements for a particular product. And that's why, the amendments the proposals for the amendments started coming in at the BIS. So in November last year, they had the major meeting where they took in all the proposals for the amendments that had come in, only up to that point. Although there were more suggestions given in that meeting, but they took up only those which had been officially, they have a system incidentally for that. So the system is they have a template, and you have to comment on the template clause by clause of the standard. If you say, if you have an issue, let's say with the front edge overturning requirement stability test, then you have to look at the particular clause, say that this is the current requirement, this is the concern, this is therefore the proposed text in the standard. That's how you give a comment on the standard. It is clause by clause. They don't entertain general comments. What happened in this case, because we came in, AFMT came in a bit late on this one, we had not prepared ourselves to give clause by clause comments. And therefore, I've been requesting, of course, Ms. Josefawala, that we urgently need to form a technical committee under the AFMT. And I'll tell about the time frame that we have. So what we did in that committee was, we did a very strategic thing. We said, okay, if these are all the requirements in the standard, why can't we have graded standard? That means the entry-level standard. And then we have a standard which is good for, let's say, the premium manufacturers, or after some time, after we have gained experience, and we can graduate to another level. So, so they asked the question. So, okay, what do you mean by graded? They said, okay, we already reduced some of the requirements. In some requirements, we already have grades. So, but our intention was that instead of meeting so many requirements, the grade itself can be that reduce the number of requirements to be tested by a person who wants to make it entry. So safety requirements or durability tests, instead of say 5 tests, let's have only 2 in the beginning. So that's also certain standards, certain certification programs have that arrangement where you can actually grade the standards. So that's the proposal that we gave to BIS. Mr. Josefawala was present, I was present. So of course, BIS came back to say, no, that's a very general comment. And how can we entertain this without any specific suggestions? But good thing is, although they took a lot of time to write the minutes, they came only in February, or I think early March. The minutes have arrived finally with the amendments, which were discussed. So our proposal has been recorded in the minutes, and they have requested AFMT now to give the proposal. So what are those specific proposals, clause by clause, they say that you want to do? So a grade, so we have an option, we have an obligation now to propose to the BIS that if supposing we want to grade the standards into 2 levels or 3 levels, how can we do that? And whether in terms of specification levels, or like, for example, number of cycles, or the particular test, they can be, you can say that these less number of tests you want to do right now in the beginning. And then it's happening in the case of footwear, this also come under mandatory certification. So the government has actually come out with too many lenient programs under footwear. And different kinds of discount concessions are being given in different product groups. So that is what is happening. So that's what we can also possibly think of doing. So this is for this particular standard. I also have for similar for other chairs, similar requirements. And they look very similar actually, if you see. There are differences, of course, in this. And in this one also. So tables, for example, also there are a lot of the strength tests are very complex over here, and all kinds of tables. Now the difficulty here is that when you look at stools and tables, and all of them are covered in this one: coffee tables, center tables, so work tables, pantry tables, office tables, everything is covered over here. They don't differentiate. And that discussion also took place in the secretary's office even later, with whether they really need to cover all types of tables. As of now, they are there. And then, of course, also the tests given here are much more complex than for chairs over here. And then, so this one is for sorry, just a moment. Storage cabinets. Yeah. Okay. Storage cabinet also, the stability tests and the component loads and component storage tests are very, very complex, because they want to test without load, with full load, wall mounted, loads kept at different elevations within the cabinet, so at different heights. So all of them, and then they have to measure the deflections. So again, the question arose: if it is a wall-mounted cabinet, why do you want to test all of them? Because already stable. So why do you want to conduct stability tests? So there are arguments and counter arguments for each one of these. So, but then there have been revisions in some of these. The proposed revisions have actually, some of them have come, but they are still under discussion. Similarly, this is for beds. Beds also primarily the loads and the height from which the load test was to be conducted. That was a major cause of concern. So that proposal has been accepted. So also reduce the number of cycles, reduce the load, reduce the number of cycles. Some of the proposals that were made have been accepted. So I don't know whether you have access to that amendment, but I will certainly send it to Mr. Zefawala, and you can go through the detail. This is for bunk beds. Similar changes have actually happened. I actually have with me a synopsis done by somebody. I'll see if I can read it out to you. I've not put it in a presentation here, so we can look at that later. And then these are this is the website where I would suggest to all of you. Of course, I'll share this presentation with you. This is where the latest policies, notifications, amendments are issued by the DPIIT. Okay, I can click it here, but let's move forward. It's just a site here, and then also to show to you how to navigate the BIS website. So this is their homepage, BIS, and that's where you look at this, and then you go to the conformity assessment. From here, then under conformity assessment, you have product certification, and then from product certification, then you go to scheme 1, right? And that's this. Then you come to this one, apply for the license. So although this is clickable right now, I don't want to disturb this. Let's run through the presentation, and then this is where I talked to you in the beginning, about the application process. This is also from the BIS website, and just a copy from there. And here, if you see, this is the entire process, how to apply. So you identify the Indian standard, and then you can actually download all the Indian standards, unless it is ISO standard, free of cost. So you can actually create a login, and you can download all the standards. And then you have to do your self-study to see that you have the infrastructure, process controls, quality control, so on and so forth. But also BIS developed something which is called a technical manual for every product that comes under certification. So that contains a lot of guidance on the equipment, the manufacturing, testing equipment, and the process controls, all of that information and competence. And also they talk about how samples are going to be tested, because you see, one manufacturer may be making multiple models, grades of a product. So if BIS starts testing all of them, then it becomes very cumbersome. So they do create families within the grades. So if they can test to 3 or 4, then they certify the entire family. So that comes in this manual here. For furniture, it is still to be done, incidentally. For boards, it's already there. So manuals are there for furniture also. But if you look at them, they're not properly developed. They will obviously go through another round of discussion once the standards are revised and published again. So that's where we intend to step in again, because that will become extremely important. We have to ensure that the number of samples that need to be tested for the furniture models that you make should be kept at a minimum, and it should be also additive. That means if certain feature of let's say a product has been already tested, and if the same feature appears in another product, then that should not be retested. So only the additional feature should be tested. All that will be a matter of discussion, deliberation, and evolution. Not yet happened. So that comes when the certification scheme starts, and that's when the technical manuals are going to be formulated. So we will have to play a role in that. So I think, again, my request to AFMT will be that the technical committee becomes extremely important, both for the standards development, the amendments that are going through right now, and more importantly, when this will come, because this will determine the amount of labor, amount of money, effort, time that we will be spending on getting ourselves certified. And also for later on, when we want to add more varieties, more grades to the license, so that cycle has to be repeated. So how can we minimize that? That's going to be very important. Good news is, understanding is that strictly custom-made furniture will not be covered in the standard. But again, definition of custom-made is again something which is to be deliberated, not yet decided. So whether you make a small change, it becomes a custom-made, or it really has to be made in situ on site, and only then it will be custom-made. So that is all going to be, for example, some of the modular manufacturers, they offer customization based on modules. So is that customized, or that is considered to be a standard furniture? Those definitions are still not in place. We can propose from our side as well. So these are issues that are still going up, and we need to discuss with them. Then the next step, after all this, you go through the manual, and then the same thing, number 5, describe what I've already informed to you. There's a 2 number 5 here. The second number 5, sorry, are the 2 options that I mentioned to you. One is where BIS officer will come to the factory evaluation. He will draw the sample. He will get it tested in the laboratory, of course, at your cost. And then the report is appraised and the license is granted. And then that's it. In the second simplified case, you can yourself, already you could have tested your sample in an approved laboratory, and factory evaluation will still happen. But you can produce your report, say that this is the sample that I've tested, and you can grant me a license. So they'll grant you a license. But then after the grant of license, they will again test your product, because that's only for simplifying the process of grant of license. The period is cut short, not the obligation for the BIS to do independent testing. So they will still do it. So that's the difference between the 2 options. Over here, nothing else actually. And then, of course, so they have a URL. I mean, I'll send this slide again. This actually has all the connects in this one. The moment you get this presentation, you can actually click to these, and you'll be able to go to those particular websites of the BIS to learn about these. Similarly, for the fee structure also, there are, they have described, there are, it's a portal. You can plug in the IS Indian standard number, and you'll get the fee structure over there. And then there are, so payments can also be made directly on this one. And then, of course, they have offices all over the country where contacts can be made. So this slide that you see over here provides all the necessary links for you to be able to go through that process. Some other time, probably, we can look at this as well and do another webinar sometime when the time will come to go into greater detail on this precise process, how it actually functions over here. And this is, of course, so they have also issued guidelines, BIS. This page is also having the, a reference. Detail, whatever I explained to you, this is a document which prescribes in detail exact process that a manufacturer has to follow to be able to get the license, and then subsequent obligations, post licensing also, how to put the mark, for example, and when to put the mark, all of those things, and other labeling requirements, marking requirements, all of them are given over here in this document over here. So I think I'll stop over here, and I hope this was educative for you in terms of knowing how the BIS system works. Also, an update on where we are today on the furniture standards right now. I'll stop sharing my screen here, and my again strong recommendation is most urgently we need to form a technical committee. Therefore, I've already requested him,
Yes, sir.
because the issues are very hot as of now. The minutes that came out early this month have given 2 months time for the comments on the amendments that have been proposed. So one is that we have to look at those and comment on those amendments, whether we accept them or we have a comment further. And the second is the AFMT has been given, they have said for any other thing, it's a 1 month period that has been given, other than those specified amendments which have been proposed. So we have a 1 month window to actually propose. Suppose we want to propose graded standards. We just have about, now I think maybe just about 2 weeks are left, or a little more than that. So we need to be able to send something to the BIS more specific on if you want a graded, grading within the standards, entry level and second or third level. Then we should, that's the time that we should propose. So one of the purposes of doing today's webinar was also this, and I hope we can now deliberate on that. How can we go ahead and do that? So Mr. Sampurwala, I think you
Yes,
can
sir.
take over, and
Yes,
I'm
sir.
happy to answer any other.
Right, sir. So
Yeah.
members, as requested by Mr. Kaul, have been repeatedly saying we need to participate in this activity of whatever the amendments are required in this thing draft standards, which I have already been sharing several times. So I again request all of you to please go through them and give your feedback on the same. And we already have formed a group of people who are interested to be a part of the technical committee. And I think now we'll create separate verticals for each category wise, like for chair, a separate group. And, subsequently, then we can start deliberating on all these different amendments. And of course, Mr. Paul will guide us on how to go about it. So my request is please participate. It is very important. We only have a month now to respond to this. And if we do not respond, then BIS will definitely go ahead and implement certain standards which we'll have to follow. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this enlightening webinar. And now I'll hand over to Mr. Chintan to take for the Q&A.
Yeah, okay, sure. Thank you, Mr. Sampurwala.
So, Anupam, sir, it was quite useful and interesting as always. Even me and Huzafa sir being in the CD35 committee, today also we learned something new from your session. So now I have noted down 10 questions which are asked by asked today in the chat box. So I'll just take one by one. So the first question what is asked is, if a vendor is non-BIS certifier, can we be able to import and test the material?
Chintan, I would request
No.
also please name the person as a query.
Yeah, sure. I'll do that. So, yeah, sir.
So, yeah, okay, let me see this. Yeah, vendor is a non-BIS certified, let's say, we can able to import and test the material. So it's like this. If it is coming under mandatory certification, then no, only the manufacturers are certified. That means the overseas manufacturer will have to get certified by the BIS. Only when he gets a certificate, then you can import from him. So you can be, that is not, so vendor, I don't know what the question is. Vendor is a non-BIS certifier. Vendor Indian or import or external, I don't know. But let me answer that question in that sense, that anybody can import a furniture only if it is already ISI marked by supplier in the overseas country who would have applied to the BIS and who would have then, BIS would have gone, certified the factory, looked at, validated the factory and granted a license for that particular variety of, so only then the furniture can be imported by anyone into the country. So irrespective of whether a vendor is non-BIS certified, right? Yeah.
Okay.
I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's answered. Yes, sir. So now second question, which is asked by one of the other member, other attendee, Swapnil Sanjay. That what is the lead time to get BIS certification? Until that, can we import the product?
Oh, is it for furniture or for anything? Yeah.
For furniture.
Okay, for furniture, as of now, there is no regulation, so you can continue to import whatever you want to do. As I mentioned to you, when the QCO comes into notification, under notification, we are expecting a 12-month time period. Okay, during which everybody has to get the certification. Okay. So whether you are importing or you're buying from India within that 12-month period, there is no issue. Now, another issue that I had raised during today's webinar was about that IKEA story about the utensils, in which I brought out the point that there is a gray area in terms of material that is already in the pipeline, the supply chain, which was non-certified by a manufacturer because he was not obliged to certify then, what happens to that? So from a retailer's perspective, it's like this. That is still unanswered today. It's like this. Nobody knows the answer today. Even the government does not know. So the questions have to be raised. It's already been raised by the other industry, from AFMT, from the block board manufacturers who are already, I mean, for them at least, we know there is a QC already in place. I think we also should ask a similar question and suggest, not only ask a question. I have suggestions, very clear suggestions. I'll share that with you. And then we must write a letter to the DPIIT and say that for, maybe up to another 6 months time, another 12 months time for liquidation of stocks in the pipeline. Okay, from the date, the last date of implementation of a QCO. So last date, when I say, what I mean is, so it is now currently 6 months, another 3 months, another 3 months. The last cutoff date for, let's say, a block board will come sometime in the month of August next year, 2025, for the micro. From that date onwards, there should be another 6 months to 12 months time available for the stocks to get exhausted, like this. Okay, so that's how we should be looking at this particular question. Okay, so now for getting the certification from BIS, that process is not very long. If that's also a question. It depends how many models you want to get tested at one point of time, right? If you just start with one model, process may, and you already tested your product, a license can actually be granted in just about 2 months time, or even less, right? First time license for any product takes a little longer, but once one license has been granted, second onwards, it becomes much faster. But if you are going to offer 50 varieties, 50 models at the same, then testing will take time, everything will take time. So lead time maybe 6 months, 8 months also, it depends, like this.
Right. So now there's one very interesting question which is asked by one of the other member, Mr. Sanjay, saying that how does BIS certification helps to export furniture?
Okay, good. Okay, a good question again. Now, as first, let me clarify. So all QCOs have exempted mandatory certification for exports. All QCOs, irrespective of which product. Okay, that's the general, always a policy, because an exporter has to meet obligations of the buying country. Okay, very few products are covered by Export Inspection Council. Some of the food products, I think, they have to comply Indian regulations as well. But everything else, first of all, there is no obligation. If you're exporting, no worries. Okay. Second point in this is, very recently, if you have probably read, so DGFT has intervened. What was happening was that government had, for certain products, even stopped buying, allowing raw materials to be bought, which requires certification when the final product was to be exported. You see, for example, you're buying steel or something like this, or wooden block board, let's say. You make furniture and you're exporting. So the obligation was that you have to still buy ISI marked block boards. Okay. I think last 1 week back or 10 days back, so DGFT is intervened to say that something that advanced authorization will not be required now. So that means if you are only going to export, and if you're buying a raw material, which is non-ISI marked, you can continue to do that. So the import will be allowed. You can use that in your finished product and then export it. So that is as far as the legal side or the obligation side is concerned. As far as help is concerned, so now it's a standard product. It has a national mark, quality mark on the product coming from the National Standards Body of India. So it's up to you to be able to leverage that advantage for an export market or from an export buyer, that my product is coming under a BIS certified or a national certification program like this. Okay. As of now, BIS has not done any kind of a market sell for exports from India. There's another body called Export Inspection Council, Export Inspection Agency, Council, who, or there are Export Promotion Councils, EEPC is there, Export Engineering Promotion Council. So those are the bodies that help our manufacturers export based on these leverages. So BIS is also a leverage which can be done. So I think not BIS, but EEPC, I don't know if there's a furniture, I don't know if there's any other export board. Is there any? I don't know, Sheetalji. Is there any other board for furniture? Export board or something, promotion board? Huzaifah ji?
No,
There are few again depends on the country that you're exporting to.
No, I am talking the Indian board, like EPC is for engineering, AEPC is for textiles or apparels, Chemexcel is for chemicals, like this, you know. So are there any for furniture also?
I don't think so, sir.
Because I know.
don't,
Okay, then it comes under EPC then. Yeah, I think it comes under
I
EPC.
know. As
I
far as
think
recently
export
when we
promotion, export promotion of handicrafts
handicraft
also
it is
comes
there,
under.
correct.
Does it cover all of
but,
furniture? All
No,
furniture? Okay.
some of the thing, furniture also, some of the people in from Jodhpur, Jaipur area, Rajasthan, some of the areas, they classify that as handicraft. I mean, it's an old thing, but it still continues to thrive on that particular
Okay.
thing.
So
Export
I
goes
think
under
that now,
EPC.
So Nilji, now let me intervene. I think it's a good question and let's evolve something from here. So if we do not have, let's say, an export promotion board set up by the government, I think probably it might be a good idea, because why I'm saying this, if you look at the statistics, which we did, and I did an analysis some time back, furniture exports have been growing quite well, actually over the last 3-4 years. And so with a good CAGR, maybe it's time to actually ask government to set up a board, export promotion board for us. And AFMT should be a body to be able to propose that to the government. So a lot of assistance then comes through them. So assured that BIS will not do it. EIC might do for the regulatory side, most likely. But primarily, it's an export promotion board that takes care of these promotions. So maybe as of now,
there is a mandate also under the foreign trade policy thing.
Great. I see. Excellent. Excellent. So there we can leverage all of these things, you know, whatever certifications, everything that we have. Riding on that, then we can do that. And then also then, incidentally, then we can also look at, you know, the international certifications, help our industry get those, and then use that for the certifications and for the promotion. Right. Thank you.
Right. So, so that leads to the another question. So there are certain people are concerned about. I would say Recline in India, who is our member, is asking that if a company is making 10 different functional products, then do we have to take 10 different certifications?
Okay, so I already answered this question in certain way. I'll explain it again. If all the products, let's say they're only all varieties of beds, all varieties of chairs, that will get clubbed under one license. Okay. If you're also making chairs, work chairs and normal chairs, which are classified in 2 different standards, then you have to take 2 licenses. If you're making beds, then it's 3 licenses. It's like this. So if as I told you, showed you the 6 different standards. Whatever gets covered in those, the scope of each standard will get clubbed together to get 1 license. But do remember, a license does not mean that only 1 model will be tested. For testing of models, that policy is still to be evolved. When the product manual will be made, we have to then go to them, negotiate with them, explain to them how it's a family, and therefore if I have a family of, let's say, modular family of, let's say, 5 different products, and they're only additive in nature, you can test 1 and that will certify all of them. So those are things that are still to be worked out for nature, and we should do that one. So I hope I have answered. For the license part, administratively, 1 license for a family. But testing wise, for inclusion of a grade in a license, every model has to get included. Like this, or a family, or a category, if we can use that, if BIS agrees to that. Then
so sorry to interrupt you, sir. Actually, we are making the recliner chair. So
right.
Recliners may be manual, motorized, rocking, revolving. Means the functionality is same and model may be different. So do we need to go through all the testing to be tested, or means one family can get the 1 certification?
I think family-wise, it should really work in this particular case. And especially for you, for example, the same recliner you can motorize and non-motorize as well.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Exactly the same mechanism will be there, except for 1 part. So what can be done here? You first get the recliner, non-motorized recliner certified, and then you say, now this is additive. So only the part of that motor function, you know, that can be tested, and then the whole thing gets certified. That's how it should emerge. It should evolve. As of now, it is not existing, but this is what we should be able to propose. We need to apply our minds to be able to prove to them that this is how additive testing can be done, and the whole family can get certified.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Sir, one question, other question is that from Mr. Dhaval, who is our Pune member, is asking that if company has certain quality certifications like SEDEX and ISO, will it help in taking the BIS?
No, actually, see, SEDEX is basically, if I know it correctly, that is only a social responsibility standard. Basically, it's not for product quality. And ISO 9001, if they have, or any other, it's again a very broad management system standard, which exclusively claims that we are not certifying a product. What can happen is, if you have an ISO certification, your process side is already taken care of in certain ways. So you only have an internal advantage of proving yourself better when the factory inspection will take place, but doesn't get any discount. No concession, no discount, evaluation will still take place. You are just better off improving yourself, to the inspector, to the inspection team. That's it.
Correct, rightly said.
Yeah.
Sir. And some different 5-6 members has asked about their product on what they do or manufacture or trade. So similar question, which I have just noted down here is, so how do they know on, let's say somebody is into aluminum profile, someone is into hospital furniture, someone is into mattresses. Do they have any kind of, standards going on? How do they know if at all they wanted to get involved from now at the very initial level? And if at all no, then when can they get the information?
Yeah. Okay. So as far as mattresses are concerned, as far as I know, they are already under certification, voluntary certification. Okay. So I think a lot of manufacturers already have that one. So it is there. If you want, you can get it right now, only for the market advantage. Also, in a way, preparatory, because if furniture is going to get under mandatory, I personally think it won't be too long before mattresses also start falling under that, under mandatory certification. As of now, it's not there. I have shown to you the BIS, the DPIIT website notification. Please continuously keep monitoring that for any notification that comes from there. Also, I think, is mattresses coming under AFMT as a scope?
Yeah, so it is considered to be a furniture, one of the furniture.
Okay, very good. So I think AFMT newsletters should now also be able to capture some of the advanced intimations on proposals for covering the products. So there is a longer list of products that are in the pipeline. I would not really remember whether mattress is in that or not. We can look at that, and then we will at least know that at some point of time, mattress is also going to get covered in this or not. As of now, it's not there. There's no draft right now, and there is no notification as of now. And similarly, for smart locker manufacturers, I don't know much about smart locker manufacturers. Really, vaults, smart lockers will be vaults, basically, isn't it? I think so, most likely. Yeah. I can check. I don't.
Lockers, basically, smart lockers are basically nothing but normal lockers, but with locking system which are like biometric or kind of Wi-Fi enabled.
Yeah, yeah. So they're vaults.
Far, there is nothing of that kind. I've gone through it, but normally metal furniture, the metal cabinets are covered. So maybe there is a slight variation on the same thing.
Yeah, possibly. But locker, I don't think covered the metal cabinet. Purpose is very different. And as far as I know, vaults have a different standard. There is a standard for vaults.
No, sir, this is not for vault. I think the inquiry.
Not a vault?
Not for vault. Not for vault.
Okay.
So we have these normal staff lockers, okay, which are used in corporates.
Okay. Staff lockers. Sorry. Okay, I got it now.
Yes. So that particular category, there people are inquiring.
That could come under
because a lot of our manufacturers are manufacturing this as a product. Hence, I think that inquiries come up. So we'll have to look into that, sir.
Okay, right. We'll look into this. So we can't answer it right immediately. Yeah, because product specific questions will be a bit difficult for anybody to be able to answer immediately. Yeah. But we can certainly note the questions and try and answer them subsequently. Yeah. Okay. Then outdoor furniture.
I have a question, sir.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I have a question. SOFA is such a experiential product. So experience comes with one of the main attributes is the comfort level. So comfort level cannot be measured from this level to, I don't really have the comfort level. The standards could be there, but comfort level being one of the main criteria for sofa design and manufacturing and selling. So how does one assess, or how does the standards can come into such kind of come into picture where comfort level can be measured? It's very difficult. It's a experiential thing.
But so far, I think still the standard is still under development or something. It's still not coming under our list at
The
this
draft,
moment.
sir. The draft is already
Yeah.
there. They already circulated the kind
Yeah.
of pre-draft. And just to answer that, they are also, we had given a proposal last meeting, last meeting I had suggested regarding ergonomics, in the standard, there is no mention of ergonomics. anywhere.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think
Yes.
they have taken that also as one of the suggestions. And I think that can be connected to the comfort level, what Mr. Sunil is talking about.
Yeah, one thing, Mr. Sunil, which when Mr. Pant, when he was present in the meeting with the Secretary Consumer Affairs, he said that we are not imposing any other quality standards on the furniture except for the safety, and of course to some extent material. Material, of course, is there, and there was some discussion on that basically. But he's saying that comfort is a quality feature. They are not going to standardize it. So even within a sofa, I think probably it will be a safety and a durability requirement. I mean, so because you use springs and those kind of stuff. So maybe there will be durability tests in that and safety, but certainly it won't. But ergonomics, I think probably like in work chairs is a very important criteria. So those can get included there actually.
Especially for the office furniture range, I think there
Yes,
play an important role.
Precisely, exactly. So I don't think we have a cause of concern at this moment as far as the comfort side is concerned. It will be all safety related. Yeah.
Sir, I have one question. Shailesh Patel.
Yes, Mr. Shailesh.
Yes, sir. Sir, my question here is that if I am manufacturing an ISI product, okay, right now, what do we do is if somebody asks कि आपके पास certificate है क्या आप दे दो करके, okay. So my question here is that do we need to mention it in the invoice also that this is an ISI product that I've sold you, or only on request we give the certificate?
Oh, right now that means you have a license already at this moment.
Yes.
Under voluntary.
Yes.
Is it a board? Some board you're manufacturing?
Yeah, I manufacture plywood.
Plywood. Absolutely no obligation for you to put ISI mark on every product or on the invoice. It's completely your choice at this moment. If you have somebody asks, you can do that. If in the retail you think it's better to put the ISI mark, you can do that one. It is certainly there is no necessity as of now. Now,
my question is on the do I need to in the sales bill that this is an ISI product I've sold you?
It's not a requirement as such. It's not a requirement. Not a requirement. But
maybe even after QC.
But let me tell you one. Let me give you one caution here. So what happens? Many times products are duplicated in the market. Okay, when a BIS party goes for a search and seizure, and I have experienced it myself, I find a product in your name with ISI mark. Okay, now my first reaction is that I will assume that you are also a party to the crime. It could be the seller. He may have put the mark himself. He may have got it done for somebody else. Okay, it's like this. So I will also ask for the invoice by that party. कि भाई आपने खरीदा है, आप हमको दिखाओ उसमें क्या लिखा हुआ है इसमें. Now, supposing आपका भी invoice वहाँ पे है, it doesn't have any indication either a batch number, lot number, or ISI mark or size mark product. I will assume that you are आपने actually दिखाया नहीं है in the factory, but यहाँ पे लगा दिया है mark. So there is a safety angle involved here, in your own interest to somehow link it. Either not the ISI mark, but you can put a batch number or something like this. I also find many times in the market in plywood and many things. You put the ISI mark, you don't put the lot number, batch number. वो खाली रहता है. Don't do that. Don't make that mistake ever. जरूर डालिए उसमें उसके ऊपर. Because that's the first suspicion that any raiding party or searching party will actually have. That ISI mark तो लगा है, but lot number, batch number नहीं पड़ा हुआ है. So it's a matter of precaution. If you can link it through these traceability numbers, fine. Don't have to put say ISI mark, because then it will be linked. And आपके record में मिल जाएगा. वही batch number will be in your record. It's available in the market. It gets linked completely. So it's a matter of precaution as a practical experience. I'm telling you this. Yes.
If I've got a license, so it is better I clear myself out, because when it becomes mandatory, at that time, it will fall out to me only.
Yeah, तब तो choice ही नहीं है, of course, right. Even now,
And if I put
it's
it
good
in,
to take precaution.
yes, okay,
Yes.
got it. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome.
Last few questions, sir. One of the member Kaushal is asking that once the BIS certification is implemented, other certifications will be applicable like Green Guard and Green Pro, etc.
Sorry, no, again, ask that question again. I didn't get that one.
So what is asking that once the BIS certification comes in picture, will the other certifications be applicable?
In terms of what? In terms of automatic grant of those certifications, or they will also be additionally required?
So
Green
like
Credit and
certification-
Green Co and all these are all very private programs, completely optional,
Correct.
completely
So
voluntary.
let's talk about BIFMA. Let's say furniture. BIFMA is plays a big role in furniture. So will that be?
BIFMA is again for exports. BIFMA इंडिया में तो कभी यूज हो रहा है जहां तक मुझे ऐसा लगता है. इंडिया में बाय कोई कर रहा है BIFMA standards पे I don't know as of now, and will also become to some extent not as relevant when the BIS standards set in here in India. BIFMA standards will not play hardly any role within India. For exports, BIS is not required in any case. And so if you are exporting to a buyer, it will be to BIFMA standards or the BIS standards as such. So there is no connect between the two, actually. It's like BIS is using BIFMA right now, of course, to an extent. They have agreed to do that in the amendments and all that. So what is, so they're looking at that, those standards as of now. But certification, no. So and ISA mark is not BIFMA. Also be very clear. The standards are different. BIFMA in certain cases is higher, in certain cases is lower from the BI standards. So it does not conform compliance to BIFMA standards. That will be a completely different program. A BIS certification will not conform BIFMA compliance.
So, sir, my question, one of my questions is,
Please.
recently I came across one of my business associate or I would say supplier, wherein he imported certain furniture which has a upholstered product. It's a
Upholstered.
Textile upholstered product, and his product got stayed back at the port, saying that the textile is under the BIS, so that this product cannot come out. And this product is a.
But what was the no? That should not happen. That should not happen. HS code was what? HS code was for the furniture, isn't it? The tariff code.
So basically, it was a sofa and chair item.
Yeah. No, that's incorrect.
Chair cushion was having textile on there. Definitely, it will have a fabric over it.
No, if that starts happening, I think some very smart.
It has already started happening. One of our member, Ahmedabad member, AFMT member.
Please complain to customs senior level and to DGFT. This is harassment because that is the HS code is different. Textile, if you're buying is textile only. Otherwise, if you start looking at component within component, it doesn't happen that way. Only in one case, two or three cases, it is component level certification. I'll tell you where. So for tin cans, okay, product made from tin steel, okay. If you're importing them, only in that case, it says the steel should be of that particular grade. In that case, it is specified in there. In that case, you understand? Similarly, for stampings also, it says the steel should be of a particular grade, electrical stampings. But wherever such a requirement comes, it is specified in the QCO. In this case, if you're buying a upholstered sofa, there's no question. So textile, you can use whatever you want. Certainly, it is a incorrect application of this one. For parts and components, QCOs are not applied. So somebody is playing a game here. I mean, you know what happens there. So it's you can actually raise a complaint or raise a dispute over there.
I think sir, that time we had actually complained. This complaint comes to us, and we had approached DPIIT also, and they said they will issue an NOC for the same in case something like that.
Absolutely. No, it should not be. See, not NOC. Kya hota hai Uzaifa ji? NOC again becomes a process. Then every time customer will stop. Every time you have to go and get an NOC. This should become a policy matter. That means components and accessories and parts. If they're applied, if the government wants it, then they have to specify it in the relevant QCO. It's like this. It doesn't happen that some customer officer will actually go on and apply his own discretion. It doesn't work that way. So I think Chintaji, that's the answer. It was incorrect, actually. That's right. I've told you examples where the material requirement has been specified in the QCO itself.
Yeah. Sir,
Okay.
very general question, which is again asked by one of the member that, how the BIS standard are going to impact the international traders? Again, the similar question. I mean,
International traders or suppliers from overseas.
yeah,
So again, let's put it like this. At the moment, there is a very strong policy of curbing imports from China, Vietnam, and also in general ASEAN countries at this moment. Okay. China, Vietnam is almost at this moment almost a complete stop, at least from the QCO side and all this. Even licenses are not being renewed. So any international trader buying from these countries may face some difficulties. Even from other countries, he may face difficulties. It'll be his responsibility to get the supplier certified or find suppliers who are already certified, buy from them and supply in India. So yes, it is any QCO, anything like this becomes either the hardest or toughest, it is on the traders. It's like this. And that is intentional too, because many times you suffer as manufacturers because a commodity comes into the country, because there's a glut somewhere, it comes into the country, prices go down, and then everybody suffers. So that comes to the trading route, basically. So, and not only in this case, many other, maybe boards also, for example. So if there is some protection for domestic, you can at least control your pricing. If it is a free for all, these things happen. So there is a plus side, user side. Yes, we want cheaper products, cheaper imports, user side. Domestic industry obviously suffers on pricing because of, spot prices keep going up and down because of this. So non-tariff measures always have an effect or impact on the tariffs and the pricing of the markets. So it's a very calibrated thing, but yeah, that's how it is.
true, true. I think well said, sir. And so, sir, there are many things coming in here in the chat box, guys. I just wanted to tell you that if the QCOs or the proposal of QCOs doesn't come, until then, don't worry about BIS certification, because I think until and unless it is asked by the government, we should not worry about the getting the BIS certification. But if at all you want to be a pro and getting the certification, you can definitely get in touch with Anupam sir or to the AFMT Apex committee. We will guide you more about it, because there is a very similar general questions being asked frequently. So any other questions, you can please write down to us on our email ID, afmtindia@gmail.com and info@afmt.in. And that's all, Anupam sir. I think most of the questions are
Thank you. Yeah.
answered.
We will,
And we will, we are highly, we are delighted that all the questions are answered, and you have actually.
yeah. So any other, in fact, Chintan, we can just tell everybody if there are any more queries, they can mail it to us, and we'll
Yeah, that's
definitely
what I
answer
just
those
told.
queries also. We'll share with the sir also. And
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
answer those
yeah,
queries
yeah,
later
yeah.
on. So
Yeah.
That's what
Just one question I'm answering, one important question. Validity of certification, is this one time or renewal based? It is renewal based. It is renewal based. So it is
Yearly,
not a one-time certification. Yeah.
it's yearly, you know.
It could, yeah, no. It 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. It depends how much you have to pay advance fees.
Correct.
It can go up to 3 years also.
Yeah.
But it is renewal based. Yeah.
So, sir, I think we have come to the end of the session, and now I would like our Delhi President, Mr. Narayan Das, to offer the vote of thanks. Narayan ji?
जी सर
हाँ सर, प्लीज आप दिल्ली स्टाइल में सर, आपके अनुपम सर भी जो अपने दिल्ली के हैं, सर वुड रिक्वेस्ट आपकी दिल्ली स्टाइल से इनको वोट ऑफ थैंक्स ऑफर करिए प्लीज.
थैंक यू जेफा जी फॉर गिविंग मी दिस अपॉर्चुनिटी. गुड इवनिंग एवरीवन. थैंक यू कोल साहब. You are as fabulous, as perfect as usual every time. The way you explain the BIS standard to us, the way you explain each and everything, you remind me of my college days. There was one subject of theory of mechanics, and in the class, our teacher also speak the way you speak. So I remind of my college days. It's a fabulous session, and I think members now have better ideas about BIS. And you have well explained each and every policies, what is the method, how it will be implemented, what is the main parameters, and how much is the timeline, and the way you handle the queries of the members, there are 6-7 queries, and you explain each and every subject in a great way. So thanks a lot on behalf of AFMT Apex team, on the behalf of AFMT every member. I especially thanks to you for being here and enlightening us. And I hope, and I will assume that in future, whenever we will need, you will support us, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Right. And I thank you, sir. Thank you, Narayan ji.
Thank you.
Sir, we
Thank
also have our president from Pune, Madam Daksha Jain. Daksha Jain, if you would like to just offer a few words.
Thank you, sir. Can you give me opportunity to speak in front of all these BSI rules? And we have met in Delhi when there is a BSI session was there. And really, it's a good session. And thank you very much to everyone to attend this session. And definitely, we'll back to you. Any queries are there. Definitely mail to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
We'll keep, as you requested, we'll try and form the technical committee and we'll look forward to your guidance. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Yeah. One more thing, Mr. Bhaji, I'm going to
Thank
send
you,
you this
sir.
presentation.
Thank you very much.
It has the links, so you can send it to everybody. So it'll be
Okay.
useful for everybody. Yeah,
Right,
that's
sir.
right. Yeah.
Right, sir.
Yeah,
That will be very kind of
Thank
you, sir. Thank you so much.
Most welcome. Yeah.
And
Thank
sir,
you,
we have
everybody.
recorded
Thank you
this
very much.
meeting. So we have recorded this meeting. We'd like
Thank
to
you, sir.
get your
Thank you.
permission to upload it on your YouTube channel, sir.
Please. Oh, yes, please do
Thank you,
that.
sir.
Most
Thank you
welcome.
so much.
Of course, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.